Hi everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you to this episode of Mahabharat, Heroes and Their Stories. In our attempt to further the series, we will start with the translated version of the Ved Vyas Mahabharat by Kisari Mohan Ganguli, who was with us since 1883 to 1896. In the preface, he remarks that the object of a translator should ever be to hold mirror upon his author. That being so, his chief duty is to represent, so far as practicable, the manner in which his author's ideas have been expressed, retaining, if possible, at the sacrifice of idiom and taste, all the peculiarities of his author's imagery and of language as well. In regard to translations from the Sanskrit, nothing is easier than to dish up Hindu ideas so as to make them agreeable to English taste. But the endeavour of the present translator has been to give in the following pages as literal a rendition as possible of the great works of Vyasa. To the purely English reader, there is much in the following pages that will strike as ridiculous. Those unacquainted with any language but their own are generally very exclusive in their manners of taste. Having no knowledge of models other than what they meet with their own tongue, the standards they have formed of purity and taste in composition must necessarily be a narrow one. The translator, however, will ill discharge his duty if, for the sake of avoiding ridicule, he sacrificed fidelity to the original. He must represent his author as he is, not as he should be to please the narrow taste of those entirely unacquainted with him. So, keeping in mind the fidelity of the text provided in the translation, this is an honest attempt to share the version with the listeners. Om. Having bowed down to Narayan and Nara, the most exalted male being, and also to the goddess Saraswati, must the word Jaya be uttered. Ugrashava, the son of Lomaharshana, surnamed Sauti, well versed in the Puranas, bending with humility, one day approached the great sages of rigid vows, sitting at their ease, who had attended the 12 years sacrifice of Shaunak, surnamed Kulpati, in the forest of Nemisha. Those ascetics, wishing to hear his wonderful narrations, presently began to address him, who had thus arrived at that recluse abode of the inhabitants of the forest of Nemisha. Having been entertained with due respect by those holy men, he saluted those munis or sages with joined palms, even all of them, and inquired about the progress of their asceticism. Then, all the ascetics being again seated, the son of Lomaharshana humbly occupied the seat that was assigned to him. Seeing that he was comfortably seated and recovered from fatigue, one of the rishis, beginning the conversation, asked him, Whence cometh thou, O lotus-eyed Sati, and where hast thou spent thy time? Tell me, who asked thee in detail? Accomplished in speech, Sati, thus questioned, gave in the midst of the big assemblage of contemplative munis a full and proper answer in words consonant with their mode of life. Sati said, having heard the diverse sacred and wonderful stories which were composed in his Mahabharat by Krishna Dwaipayan and which were recited in full by Vaishampayan at the snake sacrifice of the high-souled royal sage Janmejay and in the presence also of the chief of princes, the son of Parikshit, and having wandered about, visiting many sacred waters and holy shrines, I journeyed to the country venerated by Dvijas, or twice borns, and called Samanta Panchaka, where formerly was fought the battle between the children of Kuru and Pandu, and all the chiefs of the land ranged on either side. Thence, anxious to see you, I come into your presence, ye revered sages, all of whom are to me as Brahma, ye greatly blessed, whose shine in this place of sacrifice with the splendor of solar fire, ye who have concluded the silent meditations and have fed the holy fire, and yet who are sitting without care. What, O ye Dvijas, or twice born, shall I repeat? Shall I recount the sacred stories collected in the Puranas, containing precepts of daily religious duty and of worldly profit, or the acts of illustrious saints and sovereigns of mankind? The Rishi replied, the Purana, first promulgated by the great Rishi Dwaipayan, and which, after having been heard both by the gods and the Brahma Rishis, was highly esteemed, being the most eminent narrative that exists, diversified both in diction and division, possessing subtle meanings, logically combined and gleaned from the Vedas, is a sacred work. Composed in elegant language, it includeth the subject of other books. It is elucidated by other Shastras, and comprehendeth the sense of the four Vedas. We are desirous of hearing that history, also called Bharata, the holy composition of the wonderful Vyasa, which dispelleth the fear of evil, just as it was cheerfully recited by Rishi Vaishampayan under the direction of Dwaipayan himself at the snake sacrifice of Raja Janmejay. Sauti then said, having bowed down to the primordial being Ishan, to whom multitudes make offerings and who is adored by the multitude, who is the true incorruptible one, Brahma, perceptible, imperceptible, eternal, who is both a non-existing and an existing non-existing being, who is the universe and also distinct from the existing and non-existing universe, who is the creator of high and low, the ancient, exalted, inexhaustible one, who is Vishnu, beneficent and the beneficence itself, worthy of all preference, pure and immaculate, who is Hari, the ruler of the faculties, the guide of all the things movable and immovable. I will declare the sacred thoughts of the illustrious sage Vyasa, of the marvelous deeds and worshipped here by all. Some bards have already published this history, some are now teaching it, and others, in like manner, will henceforth promulgate it upon the earth. It is a great source of knowledge, established throughout the three regions of the world. It is possessed by the twice born both in detailed and comprehendious forms. It is the delight of the learned for the being embellished with elegant expressions, conversations human and divine, and a variety of poetical measures. In this world, when it was destitute of brightness and light, and enveloped all around in total darkness, there came into being, as the primal cause of creation, a mighty egg, the one inexhaustible seed of all created beings. It is called Mahadivya and was formed at the beginning of the Yugas, in which we are told was the true light Brahma, the eternal one. the wonderful and inconceivable being present alike in all places, the invisible and subtle cause, whose nature partaketh of entity and non-entity. From this egg came into the Lord Pitama Brahma, the one only Prajapati, with Suraguru and Sthanu. Then appeared the 21 Prajapatis, being Manu, Vaishishta, Paramamethi, 10 Prachetas, Dakshas, and the 7 sons of Dakshas. Then appeared the man of inconceivable nature, whom all the rishis know, and so the Vishvedevas, the Adityas, the Vasus, and the twin Ashwins, the Yakshas, the Sandhyas, the Pishachas, the Kuhiyakyas, and the Pitras. After these were the produced the wise and the most holy Brahma rishis, and the numerous Raj rishis, distinguished by every noble quality. So the waters, the heavens, the earth, the air, the sky, the points of the heavens, the years, the seasons, the months, the fortnights, called the pakshas, with days and nights in due succession. And thus were produced all things which are known to mankind. And what is seen in the universe, whether animate or inanimate, of created things, will, at the end of the world, and after the expiration of the yuga, be again confounded. And at the commencement of other yugas, all things will be renovated, and like the various fruits of the earth, succeed each other in the due order of their seasons. Thus continueth perpetually to revolve in the world, without beginning and without end. This wheel which causeth the destruction of all things. The generation of the Devas, in brief, was 33,000, 3,333. The sons of Div were Brihadbhanu, Chakshus, Atmavibhavasu, Savita, Richika, Arka, Bhanu, Ashwavaha, and Ravi. Of these Vishwavanas of old, Mahayas was the oldest and the youngest, whose son was Devavrat. The latter had for his son Suvrata, who, we learn, had 3 sons, Dasajoti, Satajoti, and Sahasrajoti, each of them producing numerous offsprings. The illustrious Dasajoti had 10,000, Satajoti 10 times that number, and Sahasrajoti 10 times the number of Satajoti's offsprings. From these are the descendants of family of the Kurus, of the Yadus, and of Bharatas, the family of Yayati and of Ishvavaku, and also of the Rajarishis. Numerous also were the generations produced, and very abundant were the creatures and their places of abode. The mystery, which is threefold, the Vedas, Yoga, and Vijayana Dharma, Artha and Kama, also various books upon the subjects of Dharma, Artha, and Kama, also rules for the conduct of mankind, also histories and discourses with various Shrutis, all of which, having been seen by the Rishi Vyasa, are here in due order mentioned as a specimen of the book. The Rishi Vyasa published this mass of knowledge in both a detailed and an abridged form. It is the wish of the learned in the world to possess the details and the abridgment. Some read the Bharata beginning with the initial mantra or invocation, others with the story of Astika, others with Upari Charaka, while some Brahmanas study the whole. Men of learning display their various knowledge of the institutes in commencing on the composition. Some are skillful in explaining it, while others in remembering its contents. The son of Satyavati, having, by penance and meditation, analyzed the eternal Vedas, afterwards composed this holy history. When that learned Brahma Rishi of strict vows, the noble Dwaipayan Vyasa, offspring of Parashar, had finished the greatest of narrations, he began to consider how he might teach it to his disciples. And the possessor of the six attributes, Brahma, the world's preceptor, knowing of the anxiety of the Rishi Dwaipayan, came in the person to the place where the latter was, for gratifying the saint and benefiting the people. And when Vyasa, surrounded by all the tribes of Munis, saw him, he was surprised, and standing with joined palms, he bowed and ordered a seat to be brought. And Vyasa, having gone round him, who is called Hiranyagarbha, seated on that distinguished seat, stood near it, and being commanded by Brahma Parameshti, he sat down near the seat, full of affection and smiling in joy. Then the greatly glorious Vyasa, addressing the Brahma Parameshti, said, O divine Brahma, by me a poem hath been composed, which is greatly respected. The mystery of the Veda and what other subjects have been explained by me. The various rituals of the Upanishads with the Angas, the compilation of the Puranas and history formed by me and named after three divisions of time, past, present and future. The determination of the nature of decay, fear, disease, existence and non-existence, a description of creeds and of various modes of life, rule of the four castes and the import of all the Puranas, an account of asceticism and the duties of a religious student, the dimensions of the sun and moon, the planets, constellations, and stars, together with the duration of the four ages, the Rig, Sama, and Yajur Vedas, also Adhyatma, the science called Nyaya, orthoepy, and treatment of diseases, charity, and Prasadupta Dharma, birth celestial and human, for particular purposes. Also, a description of places of pilgrimage and other holy places of rivers, mountains, forests, the ocean of heavenly cities, and the kalpas, the art of war, the different kinds of nations, the languages, the nature of the manner of people, and the all-pervading spirit. All these have been represented. But, after all, no writer of this work is to be found on earth. Brahma said, I esteem thee of thy knowledge of divine mysteries before the whole body of celebrated Munis, distinguished for the scarcity of their lives. I know thou hast revealed the divine word, even from its first utterance, in the language of truth. Thou hast called thy present work a poem, therefore it shall be a poem. There shall be no poets whose work may equal the descriptions of this poem, even as three other modes called ashramas are even unequal in merit to the domestic ashrama. Let Ganesha be thought of, O Muni, for the purpose of writing the poem. Swati said, Brahma, having thus spoken to Vyasa, retired to his own abode. Then Vyasa began to call to mind Ganesha, and Ganesha, obviator of obstacles, ready to fulfill the desires of his votaries, was no sooner thought of than he repaired to the place where Vyasa was seated. And when he had been saluted and was seated, Vyasa addressed him thus, O guides of the Ganas, be thou the writer of the Bharata, which I have formed in my imagination, and which I am about to repeat. Ganesha, upon hearing this address, thus answered, I will become the writer of thy work, provided my pen do not for a moment cease writing. And Vyasa said unto that divinity, whenever there be anything thou dost not comprehend, cease to continue writing. Ganesha, having signified his assent by repeating the word Om, proceeded to write, and Vyasa began, and by way of diversion, he knit the knots of composition exceeding those close, by doing which he dictated this work according to his engagement. I am, continued Soti, acquainted with 8,800 verses, and so is Shuka and perhaps Sanjaya. From the mysteriousness of their meaning, O Muni, no one is able to this day to penetrate those closely knit difficult shlokas. Even the omniscient Ganesha took a moment to consider, while Vyasa, however, continued to compose those verses, others in great abundance. With this, we come to an end to this episode of Mahabharat and its heroes. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time, this is your host, Madhulika Rajahan, signing off. Stay healthy always. Narayan Narayan.